Good evening, everyone. I'm Deepika Bajpai, and I'm the moderator for this session. So I would begin the discussion. So it so happened that on July 28, 2025, the Supreme Court took a suo motu cognizance, and it was on the basis of a Times report which said Delhi hounded by strays, kids pay price, and there was a two-judge bench which was constituted, and uh, it's supposed to be a very strict order which says that within 8 weeks, all the stray dogs on the streets of Delhi NCR should be rounded off and moved to shelter homes. So I would begin with Professor Harsha, and of course we cannot question a bench that too of a Supreme Court. But I would like to ask him what was wrong with the approach of the apex court bench. What could have been done better? Because generally, when we look at any of such kind of issues, public issues, by way of PILs or by way of suo motu cognizance, it's usually they appoint amicus curiae or they have experts appointed, and then they kind of advise the court what can be done scientifically, how can it be made sustainable, and all that. But nothing of that sort happened. So I would like to ask him what could have been done better, if he has anything, any observation about how the court approached the entire issue.
Thank you. My name is Harsha. I'm a faculty at the National Law School. In fact, first thing I'll take a moment to appreciate Vishal for taking the effort of putting all this together. Uh, now, he reached out to me, and then it so happened that as like I teach environmental law. Yes, I engage with environmental law, but do I know enough? Right. So I said I'm up for it, but let me also start going through all the orders and get a sense of how the trajectory has been in terms of what the changes have been over a course of time. So it's been 2.5 weeks since I got in touch with him, and then I was like, I spent more time because I generally look at environmental law, but here was for me to look at specifically in terms of how do we look at dogs. So let's look at two aspects. I'll start in this forefront that what kind of a society are we, right? In terms of, are we someone in terms of as a design? When I say the design, in the constitutional design itself, are we a society who is, anthropocentric? Are we only focusing on humans as a central subject and everything around them, should be regulated on based on the human interest? Or are we in terms of looking at the perspective that we have more of an ecocentric or a species centric approach, right? So those can be the other alternate. And again, I spent some time going through the constitution, looking at it. Simple reflection point, no doubt our laws as well as our approach has been anthropocentric, and there is no doubt about it. Human is of central value. Human is the most important aspect, and we center our our laws around them. So now, when that's the approach, is there kind of an escape from this? And the answer to that is simple in terms of, yes, there is a mandate telling that we need to be compassionate. Yes, there is also a mandate in terms of how do we look at certain specific animals which are given a special status in the directive principles of the state policy. So this is the larger framework that we can find there. The next question that comes up is, who is responsible? And here we can identify predominantly the municipal corporation within the constitutional framework who should prevent cruelty against animals. That's pretty much the mention that we can find within the constitutional framework. What about the panchayats then? Is it only that in the urban areas there is prevention of of cruelty against animals, or is it even in other spaces? And the answer to that is, interestingly, there is nothing in the panchayats list. So it appears that when these articles were drafted and the schedules therein, we have captured the essence that prevention of cruelty against animals is more of a focus within the corporation limits, but not in the panchayat limits. Now, the reason why I'm trying to hint towards all this is to bring out anthropocentric approach, telling that there are in the design itself, in terms of how we look at things, that we are telling human is of central interest and everything else is second to him or her, right? So, in that sense, have we seen orders of this nature by courts in the past? And the answer would be yes, right? I've worked as in-house counsel before, where I've got orders telling a particular variety of tree has to be cut down if there is anything on your campus because they need more water. I've got orders in terms of what are you doing about animals. I used to work at an airport, so in terms of what are you doing about the dogs over there which come on the runway, how are you taking care of it? So I've been more on in terms of implementation. So have we seen orders like this? Yes, there is no doubt about it. Does that mean that there is finality to every finding by the courts? Maybe not. Maybe yes. You don't know. But the design in terms of the approach itself, that we are continuously evolving, there might be reasoning in terms of how we evolve. That is how humans have evolved. That's how Constitution has evolved. If you say right to privacy, for example, a few years ago, you would say, what is this? Right? And then you have a Supreme Court judgment that says, yes, within Article 21, we'll find space for it. So there are situations where courts say what we did in the past is wrong. They might say, no, what we did is in the past is right. There have been also situations where they go back to something in the past and say, well, what we did way past was right. What we did in the interim is wrong. And we want to course correct it. So courts also have gone through this evolution process in terms of their decision making. So as society evolves, of course, decisions are made. And can I sit here and defend a decision? I am no one, right? But once the Supreme Court says it, does it become the law? The answer is yes. If we have a problem with it, the only option is that we go and appeal. Now, if we don't find that opportunity that there is no more room for appeal, is there a exception that we can carve out? And that's probably with the lawmaker in terms of get to the parliament or get to the state assembly and say, can you enact a law for us on this, right? So these are our only course of action if you're looking in the system that we have in place. Now, of course, very interesting. Someone in the document was mentioning about how we look at the entire aspect in terms of Constitution itself. That maybe do we need to rethink about the Constitution itself, or how do we have to look at the design itself? I spent the last couple of days looking at all the news, debates that went on all the news channels 4-5 months ago, and it's very interesting. Some said no, the Constitution itself is wrong. It's time to change it. There were certain people in that extreme approach, but that's not someone out of reason, but someone out of emotion, probably speaking up. And someone out of the same emotion who is, for me personally, I've been chased by dogs in my childhood. I don't know, maybe a tall guy sitting on a bicycle and riding it. I don't know. Always found something. So when I told my sister I'm going, she's like, I remember you being chased by dogs all the time. And I was like, oh yes, now I remember, right? Because I'd forgotten about it. But yes, in terms of when I think about that particular aspect, that how did it prevail through me as a child, avoid this road because there are dogs, be cautious over here. I had to tell myself, take this road, avoid this road. And interestingly, when I went into that pedigree of the dog had a litter and one bike ran over it. So any young man on any kind of wheels being operated, the dog would chase. So then I was like, okay, this is how it operates, right? But it took a fair bit of effort for me to understand that. And I don't expect everyone to be in that position. And especially when I went through all the news reports, I went through all those debates, everyone was like, what about the kids? What about the elderly when they're chased, when they're having injuries and so on and so forth? How do we protect them? And I go back to the question, how is our design? Anthropocentric. Human lives value first, and then everything else around them. Then I ask another question to myself. Are there special cases where certain species are giving special prominence? And that's what comes up. Elephants that were bought out by the advocate from Delhi. Now, elephants, tigers, yes. Now, this is what we call the best interest of the species principle, telling that there are certain places where we carve out special interest for the species. Even there, if they are harmful towards humans, we say, is there a way to relocate them or move them elsewhere, right? So again, in a society that we have agreed to work on anthropocentric premise, it will always be human interest on the front and others subservient to that. And there cannot be a doubt of that. And I think that's where the court went through this approach and it said human interest first and everything else later. Could there have been an amicus curiae? Could there have been people who were specialized in this? There were counter petitions to that. There were a lot of bundle cases. It was not like it was hearing only this. But yes, there have been decisions in the past. And I know then there was again review of those decisions and so on and so forth. People felt a fair bit of respite after that. Can you bring in experts? The answer is yes. There is no doubt about that. But the point is, again, coming back to the documentary, and Vishal, in fact, ends it very well in terms of what are the solutions that we have. Education, of course, right? A lot of groups that I keep talking to, and I tell them, you know, as citizens, when we see maybe a kid or a bunch of kids tying up a a rat, dragging it along the road, do we just stop and say, "Where are your parents?" This is a inhuman thing to do, right? Or maybe even a cockroach. And as the size starts growing of the animal, then we start getting concerned. Is there an approach where we can actually educate the masses and say, how can we be compassionate? And that's the larger premise in terms of the approach that we need to take, right? These are my initial comments. I'll pause here. There is more to say, but I'll just pause here.
Thank you so much. So before I move to Seema, I would ask Vishal. Vishal, your movie, the film that you had made, you had captured a lot of voices across the spectrum, from people who were the co-founder of Blue Cross, and there were veterinarians, and there were these NGOs and all, and across cities also. So when you had begun to shoot this film, what was the scope of your movie? Because I also did not see, since I'm from the government, I did not see any voice from the enforcement agencies. I did not see any voice from the municipal authorities. So, what was the scope of your movie? What were you trying to actually convey through this movie? What were your boundaries?
So when I initially started, my idea of this topic was I don't think what I understand now I understood at that time. So my first, so I happen to have a law degree. I'm a lawyer. So my first instinct was like, how can a court, which is supposed to protect us on some constitutional values, is actually violating the same? Because no one was hurt, as far I remember. And then the point is that should we actually? You just mentioned that we should, we can't go against it. But my point is, should we value our order or a court who is not even valuing the constitution? The constitution gives power to that court, and when you are not listening to the opposite party, you sat there like they took the case suo moto and passed the order without hearing any side, without taking any argument from any side. So how do you see someone? It is more of like a, maybe if I go on, I will say, pardon my vocabulary here, but can you actually let a structural institutional dawn or something give you an order? This is what you are doing here, right? And then say that, oh, abide by this. It is more of like, will you do the same thing if your nearest counselor pass some order like that? So my initial instinct was on that point, but later on I realized that the issue is much more structural and much more deeper than this. So that is why I went to ABC and all other point. Your point of not engaging with the government agencies. So Aisha, that you see runs and shelter from Municipal Corporation of Delhi. Blue Cross of India helps Municipal Corporation of Chennai. Because see, most of the municipal corporation don't even do anything by themselves. Most of the hospitals are not functional, and when they are running these programs, they are actually going with NGOs, paying them. So, for example, Delhi, they pay 1,000 rupees per dog to neuter. And then how can you expect them to maintain their whole structure and do the procedure in a very safe manner? Sometimes what they do, if there is a complexity in the surgery, they will end up tying the dog back, and in on maybe at times on report you might see that surgery has been done, and then you will say, oh, but the dogs were neutered. How can we see puppies in this lane? uh, Chennai is a better case. The Municipal Corporation of Madras, Chennai pays 1,600 or 1,450 as far I remember. But all in all this organization, PFA, People for Animals, they are also a vendor. So no municipal corporation is actually engaging with directly. They want another NGOs to come. They will say, we will pay you some money, do this for us. So, have you seen any animal health, animal care helpline? Where can you report if there is stray dog bite, how can you report that, oh, my lane has a dog, stray dog, they are biting, can you take them? You won't see that. So the government agencies are missing from the system.
So I have an observation to make. As Professor Harsha said, that we live in a very anthropocentric. The law itself is very anthropocentric. So I think we as common citizens also are very biased. So there are a lot of these news whenever there's an outbreak of HFN1 virus, the bird flu, and then you have news of culling of birds in lakhs actually, and then we don't see this kind of outrage. And also, I mean, it's just an observation, not that I'm siding with any side, but also if you look at there's also a very whenever we talk about the Delhi media, we always say that whenever there's something happening in Delhi, it becomes a national news, but the northeast, the southern states, and the mountains, they never get that kind of sensation that they deserve. Similarly, I think there is also an urban and rural divide to this animal love or anthropocentrism that we see. I was looking at, before coming to the talk, I was looking at some data. WHO says that the snake bites is almost 3.8 million snake bites per year in India alone. And there are around 80,000 deaths from snake bites and more than 3 lakhs permanent disabilities because of snake bites. We don't see that outrage in the media. We do not see the media covering that. Sometimes I think that the bench taking a suo moto cognizance has also to do with this media sensationalism in itself. This selective outrage. Why only Delhi? Why not the entire country? Why you have to evict these dogs from the streets of Delhi NCR? So isn't the judiciary also engaged in some kind of classism? So these things, these are the points for us to ponder about. The rural, like I worked as a DFO in districts of Karnataka. I was in Gadag, I was in Dharwad, in all those districts. I worked there. And we do not know where to go when there's a snake bite. A lot of my staff get bit by snake. We get attacked by wild animals and all. We don't see this kind of sensationalism. But, when it comes to a dog bite, which is actually preventable, rabies is preventable. But then the outrage was like, let's shut all these dogs in a kind of shelter home, which is essentially nothing but indirect culling. We all know what is going to happen in shelter homes. So let us not deal with this matter directly. Let us indirectly deal with this. So I just wanted to talk about these things also, that not just the judiciary, not just the law, not just the enforcement agency, but we as humans and citizens also are very selective in our outrage. So moving on from Vishal, Madam Seema, we were having a talk before coming in, and she's also engaged herself in private capacity and also working with the government and the private NGOs and all that. She's been handling animal rescues and all that. So I would like to ask you, now that we have this kind of interim order in place, and now that all the municipalities across the country have to implement ABC rules and follow the ABC rules 2023 and procedure put in, and that given that you have a wide experience working with the government agencies, municipalities, NGOs and all, how do you think is going to be our approach? Is going to be usual, like what we have been doing all these years, or the municipality is going to sit and take note of this? Are they going to be more proactive? Because I know budget is a constraint. Like what Vishal said, 1,000 per dog is a max they can offer. Budget is always a constraint. When we are not able to provide shelter for humans, I mean, every year in Delhi, we have a lot of news of people dying out of extreme cold. We are unable to provide night shelters for them. And given that we have an anthrocentric approach, I don't think shelter homes are ever going to take a priority. So what do you see the way forward in Bangalore, given your experience?
I just want to interject on one point. Municipal Corporation of Delhi has unspent budget. They haven't spent 70-80% of their budget. So we are expecting the same agency who has actually failed to implement, even spend their budget to implement something big.
So I want to answer this as half as an ecologist and half as somebody who's been in animal welfare. The people here, the audience, who have worked far more intensely and far more closely with municipalities and governments. But as an ecologist, see, this is a population ecology kind of a problem, right? And there's a very clear solution to it. ABC requires time we want to treat it as some silver bullet action that will happen in, we'll have the policy, we have the ABC Act in 2001, and it should automatically, without any investment in infrastructure, money, and you're saying there's an unspent budget. But also, I was looking at the AWBI, which are the institutions that are project recognized to do ABC. And all over India, there are 77, only 77 apparently. And in Bangalore, there are just 3 who have ABC recognition. How is a problem, and I don't want to say it as a problem, issue that we have created as human beings are going to be resolved if you are going to invest only this much in the thing? When we know that ABC is tried and tested in other countries, and it is not only scientifically reasonable, but it is also humane, and it's common sense as well now in most countries that this is the way to take care of animal populations. The other is looking at it from someone who has worked in animal rights. So I remember when I started in 1997 in the small town of Isaac, this was before the ABC rules that had come in, the same pictures of the dogs being pulled with those wires, being electrocuted, was the reality then. And the population numbers were still there. Today, again, 25 years later, after the ABC, we are still seeing the same kind of a problem. And dogs being the weakest in this whole chain, in this food web, it's easy to blame the dogs because they don't have any voice other than the people who are doing it. So governments, there are people who you have worked with municipalities, but even in municipalities, the people we have engaged with in my limited capacity, they are not even aware of what really to do. Like, for example, after the August order is when people have reached out saying that the area where I stay in Sarjapur, saying that we want to do something about this. But who can do ABC in Bangalore? There's CUPA and there are 2 more organizations, and they just don't have the capacity to do these many operations. Panchayats do have funds, by the way. Each panchayat, based on the revenue they get, is required to allocate a certain amount of money for sterilization. But again, it either is unspent unless there is some very responsible PDO who can do it. So there is no infrastructure investment that has gone in. If money is lying unspent, then that's really tragic, because this is a problem we've done 75%, 80% ABC is done continuously. In the last 25 years that the rules came in, we could actually have solved this problem if the amount of investment had been made in money and infrastructure, but we don't have that now. So, and unfortunately, again, we are blaming the entire blame, and the consequences of it are being borne by the dogs as usual. So I don't know. I mean, it's not an easy thing to say what to advise. Everything is out there what to do. They just have to see it and do it, acknowledge it and do it. So I think in cities like Bangalore, which have a lot of people who are or Delhi, which have a lot of groups that are working on animal rights, and I would give most of the credit for any kind of neutering that has happened to the NGOs, feeders who have responsibly done this kind of a work. You have the canine clubs in Bangalore. And you have the Alsur Canine Club, you have the Cubbon Park Canine Club, that actually know which are the dogs. They ensure that they are vaccinated, that they are neutered. So central part of Bangalore, if you go, you can still see the effect of the work that they have done. And I do understand that as Bangalore is now going to become the Greater Bangalore Authority, they're trying to expand this canine clubs into the other areas. So essentially what happens with the canine club is that a group of people who are feeders, who are concerned about animals, keep an eye out, ensure that they are vaccinated, any new females, any new puppies that may have wandered in, they are also vaccinated and neutered. And it has worked. If there's an injured dog, they take the responsibility. This is a model that can work, but again, if I think of small towns and small cities, you don't even have good vet clinics there. I keep getting requests from Namakkal. I've mostly fostered cats, and I take care of cats. Sending me blood reports and asking what do I do? This is the diagnosis. How do I treat? So then I send it to my vet here, and then he tries to look at it and says those medicines are not even available in those cities. So cities like Bangalore, Delhi get a lot of attention because of the kind of ecosystem of rescuers, feeders, and concerned people. But I can't even imagine the scale of the problem in smaller towns and cities which don't have any of this. And the dog population is just increasing. 77 organizations across the country to do ABC is not even, it's a drop that has evaporated in the ocean of need. Yeah.
I have a question for Deepika actually. So because she is the only one who has actually worked in the government position, like you were highlighting. So when you were working, uh, how do you see like your team being? Because I think when you were working as a forest conservation officer, you might be working with animals, right? So did you had adequate vet? Did you had that access to that knowledge and that expert knowledge? And what was the compassionate point of view that your team might had at that time?
It's a very loaded question. So it so happens that when we joined the service, um, like also it was mentioned in the documentary, at least we have a legal backup. There's a Wildlife Protection Act which says that you have to take care of these animals. They are scheduled animals. So you have the legal support. Then there are these again knee-jerk reactions which come from the public whenever you have a leopard attack. Recently, there was a leopard attack in Bangalore, and then the clamor is that you immediately have to relocate this animal, and you have to put that animal in the zoo. So we have a law which says save the animal, and then you have a public these kind of human wildlife conflicts, and then there's a lot of pressure. So whenever we have a leopard attack, especially in rural areas, whenever there's a killing done, you won't believe it's like as if we have kept those animals as our pets. So we have people saying that nim animal ki tagod hogi, please come and take away your leopard from here. It's as if I'll whistle and the leopard will come running to me. So this is how they treat. It's your animal, your jungle, your forest, you are in charge of this and all. And then how do we strike a balance? Because again, the emotions are very high. Then there's if you look at 2-3 years back, 4 years back, there were a lot of incidents of leopard killing in Tumkur. So there was one episode where a grandmother was trying to pull her grandson from a leopard's mouth. It was like a tug of war, and she was holding on to the pant of the child, and finally the pant came out, and the leopard took away the baby. So this was, and then when they go out for the bathroom, and then attacks. So emotions are very high. Then you really cannot go and talk animals science and Wildlife Protection Act and Supreme Court judgments and all that. You have to go and immediately console them, talk in their language, give immediate compensation, and show that you have taken steps that such incidents are not repeated. And then you also have to have a sense of compassion. Just because there is a killing, I will not go around putting cages everywhere all around the forest and round up all the leopards that is available and put them in the zoo. So how do we develop that? One is we keep reading, and then like how the municipalities do, we also engage with a lot of NGOs, lot of animal expert, veterinarians, people who have worked in the wildlife. Like I'll give you an example. I was just 7 days old DFO in Bangalore. My first posting, I did not even know to speak Kannada because I come from North India and I've lived all of my life in Chennai. And there was this Vivjor school episode, if you remember, 2016. It was a very, very, very tragic. There was this leopard in the school. It was 12 hours operation. And we caught the leopard around 12 o'clock in the night. And thereafter, the real nightmare started. I used to get calls entire night saying that leopard has been spotted here, leopard has been spotted there, this is in this school. And parents calling me saying that my kids are not, they're not wanting to go to school. Kids have had maja now. So the parents calling me saying that, you have to come and speak to us personally. Only you have to come. You cannot send your DRFO or guard anybody. You have to come personally, talk to us, assuage us that there will be no leopard attacks in the future. And that was a nightmare. But then I because I was just in the service, I had just joined. And how do I do this? Then someone told me that there is a model in Mumbai, Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Similarly, a lot of leopards used to come from the IIT Bombay, and people used to be scared. And then they started a program called Let's Live with These Leopards, with a lot of awareness, a lot of education program. There was Vidya Atreya, who has worked very, very actively in Maharashtra, especially with Sanjay Gandhi National Park. I contacted her and said, can you share all your posters and the way you did this with the people there? How did you manage to, strike balance and all that? And we started that. I think it took me around 2 months, 2.5 months. I started attending all the program in all the schools. I started speaking to the parents and the DDPI, and they had a lot of questions. We answered all the questions. I told them what is the animal ecology of leopard, all that. So there is a way out. There is a way out. We need to have compassion. At the same time, we have to understand that people will not understand when emotions are high, when there are killings. I don't know if you have seen those videos. Again, because the suo moto bench had taken cognizance. The media had gone overboard in reporting every rabies case. There were horrendous videos running on social medias. When you have rabies, you have hydrophilia and hydrophobia. You want water, but you cannot swallow water. And the patient in front of you is dying asking for water, but you cannot pour water into his mouth or her mouth, if you have seen those videos. So when these emotions, tell a parent, when such an episode happens, your 5-year-old son dies of rabies, you say, no, 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 we need to have compassion, we need to have human. They will not understand, they will just stone you to death. So then how do we strike a balance? So, a movie like this. I mean, I had a very different view when I was this issue was going on. I had a very different view. I was looking at this through a lens of an enforcement agency, basically, because of my government experience or whatever. But after the movie, I had a very different take altogether. I said, there can always be a middle path, but it is slow, it is time taking, it requires a lot of investment, human investment, money, infrastructure, time. That can be done. So I look at this court's judgment, whatever the suo moto cognizance of this issue, as a beginning. We don't have to really, dissect what the court is doing. I hope that the court actually monitors the entire implementation of ABC rules, like how they have been doing with forest and wildlife. The court monitored kind of progress, and the municipalities are given infrastructure. Amicus curiae is allotted in every state, and they take, and these NGOs also are duly paid and taken help, because like Vishal said and like Seema madam said, that it is not, the municipalities cannot do it. It is just not possible. We do not have so many number of veterinarians. We do not have the unspent funds, maybe an issue, but we do not have the infrastructure. And who will take, there was also news of rabies vaccine being diluted. So you have such fundamental infrastructure issues, structural issues. You vaccinate them, and then you find that the rabies vaccine itself is polluted, it's diluted. So many issues, and I hope that this is just a beginning, and we are able to take it in a very positive way.
Sorry, you talked about ABC rules in the forest, which is monitored by the court, you said.
No, we do not have any ABC rules in the forest.
Huh.
There is no rules as such, but what happens is, these are some guidelines which come from the tiger. We have NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority, and all. We have all the guidelines how to deal with tigers, leopards, and animal-wildlife conflict. We have rules coming from there. So what happens is, whenever there is a human-animal conflict, wildlife conflict, and we capture that leopard, the first thing that we do is whether the leopard is healthy. We call a veterinarian and see whether the leopard is healthy, because if it is healthy, we can relocate it either in the same area or somewhere else. If it is not healthy, for example, if the tooth is missing, teeth are missing, if the animal is old, then it cannot hunt for itself. It will automatically come back to the human areas and take the cattle, because the animal, it is very rare for them to attack human beings actually. Usually what they do is they carry away cattle from villages. So if the animal is not healthy, what we do is we neuter it and then keep them in the zoo, or we have these animal rescue, like we have leopard rescue centers, we keep them there, leopard or tiger or whatever.
No, sorry, ma'am. My point is, like, if they're so clear in the way the animals are looked after in the forest, why can't we transplant the same thing for dogs, for stray dogs?
Yeah, that is what exactly I said. I said it can happen. It can always happen. And that's why I take this court's intervention as a beginning. Probably the court will monitor it, and we can bring the same compassion and the same science to stray dogs also, not the stray dogs, snakes, cats, and so many other animals, pigeons, so many things. So we can bring that also. It's possible. Why is it not possible?
Yeah, thank you for the documentary. It's a good attempt. But so, I mean, I'm a dog parent myself. And when even before this issue came up, I was just looking into all of the research. And then I slowly discovered that India and South Asia has comparatively not good numbers in terms of rabies and all of that. So, but that being said, of course, I believe in a compassionate approach. And I was actually taken aback when the ruling came, and various animal activists who are mostly of a elite middle class nature coming up on the streets while ignoring various other issues which are happening in the country. So I was taken aback by that. That being said, of course, I do not view that ruling itself as a wise ruling, broadly speaking. So, but I think, I mean, my question is, I think we have one researcher. I felt that the documentary could have done better with, instead of focusing on more, with all due respect to them, with the NGO activists, with more rigorous research and more marginalized voices, I felt it could have done better, because I was even reading a lot of stuff, right? I mean, there are villages of working class people, rural people who have been prosecuted and so on, because they're trying to tackle issues of dog bites. So I felt it could have been much more balanced. That being said, it's a good attempt. Yeah, and I feel what are your comments on the NGOization? I feel the NGOization is a problem because, of course, there are infrastructural issues, but the whole issue stems from the fact that the state has completely, even when it comes to the population itself, the masses itself, it has given up all its duties. And I think it's absurd that we are going to expect. NGOization is a problem. It has to go to the state. The state has to take. We cannot rely on NGOs for this. Yeah, these are my broad commentaries. Yeah, thank you.
Alright. So the thing is, your first point of not putting the marginalized voices, I have to see it was an conscious decision not to do that because of that emotional high. In the film, I tried not to put much of the emotions. I was trying to put a logical and factual discussion out of it. So, given that I have actually engaged with those issues, where on one point that I have asked Aisha that how do you see that is this an elite issue or a marginalized issue? So I have tried to engage that, but from a point from a person who has worked on the ground. So and on the other point, your point of NGO that the society and the animal care has been based around NGOs. Who is responsible for that? We got ABC rules because of an NGO only.
So, my question is enforcement is a problem for the municipalities where the animal lovers can really help. For example, Supreme Court gave very good ruling. Some of the things there has to be for stray dogs designated areas in the feeding areas for in every area, but the BBMP is unable to implement it because of various reasons. There is no support from the residents, RWAs, and everybody and everything should not be fed to the stray dogs. But that's how our animal lovers are feeding them. A high sugar biscuit is dangerous actually. They become wild. And this has to be told to the people and they don't do it. And the animal lovers should take one step forward. Instead of importing the dogs, the pet owners, they have to start adapting the dogs here. The stray dog strength will come down. So these things have to be told to everybody and they should promote this instead of talking the Supreme Court orders are wrong and all those things.
Firstly, I thank and congratulate you for exercising democracy, right? This is how we can put discussions, right? Thank you for that. So my question is like this. See, instead of going into legality instead of going into legality right away, let's discuss the ethical part of it, moral part of it, because morals and ethics should drive our law, not law should be the base of morality, right? It should be the other way around. So the point here is we are like, yeah, as you put forward, we are saying that we are being anthropocentric a lot, right? As in we think about men only all the time, right? This is the core issue that we first think, right? So the thing is, are we capable enough? Are we like, can we take up responsibility of the entire nature? Because some of our cognizance has developed a bit, we feel that humans are separated from the rest of the nature. No, we are not. We are very much part of our nature. So firstly, what I say is we cannot take the whole responsibility of the nature, right? We can think about men only, like as in humans only at the most, right? So that is my point in the first place. So when I'm addressing this anthropocentric thing, it's not bad. There are so many things. That is one thing. Firstly, I want to clear this ethical doubt that we are, very much anthropocentric. Let's clear that. Secondly, now let's come to the ethical and moral problem with this stray dog issue, right? Why I do not want to go into legality of it because, I definitely. So we say dogs should not be sheltered, right? Straight away, I'm coming to the point, right? And on the other side, we have zoos as well. So that's my question. So that's my very much question. It is, yeah. So yeah, when we shelter dogs, electrocution is happening. So many things are happening, right? And we are saying that there is a problem of budget. So budget we can levy cess, and we need not do it for so many other regions. We can do it only for metropolis, because only in metropolis this problem is so much. So we can levy cess, like we can levy cess to address this fund issue, right? So we have zoos, and why not shelter dogs as well? Because dogs get enraged during nights only. So I'm very much scared. I have so many instances dogs chased me, and dog even bit my grandmom, right? I want people to be objective on this. Let's not be subjective. Yeah. My question is this: why not shelter dogs in this
so I
sense?
think we've got a question. What he means is, when we have zoo for animals, we can also have shelter for dogs, because doctors, the dogs do get angry, and then they get enraged and they bite children. So why do we oppose this idea of shelter homes when we have a concept like zoo? So would you like to answer? Or
So I would go with the first point of animal lover. So see, we have a proven model. Sikkim is a state which has the highest per capita dogs per human, and they are rabies free from last 20 years. Dog bites are reducing, and dog population is being reduced just by doing ABC. Your point of RWA. Their municipal authority became so comfortable that RWAs are engaged. RWA guy know that if I call the municipal officer, they will come engage. Do we have some system here? Do you see BBMP giving numbers to the RWAs, engaging with them, sitting with them? How do they carry the dog? Do they actually send them back? And on another point, we have been rabies free. Even Chennai got rabies free after 135 years, because some animal lover came in the picture and asked the municipal corporation, can we do animal birth control rules? And they did on their own course. So my only point is, when we discuss, we have seen how a whole system getting failed. I am not taking side. My only point is, when we see the data, there's a clear line of data. Some individuals worked and they actually made the whole system. In the sense, we have seen governments, even the British system failed, and then we gave ABC to the world.
you want to
So
make a
just
point?
just a comment to Vishal's movie, wonderful movie. Thank you so much. I was just wondering. My question is: have you thought of making a movie involving community dogs, the good side of community dogs? Because a lot of us have a lot of good stories. We don't see community dogs being advertised. Community dogs having beautiful stories to tell. Unfortunately, every time a TV shows is actually the bad side of a community dog. So I would like to how all of us can help you to make a movie on the good side of community dogs. And just to add to that, there is this concept called One Health. You would have heard of that, Vishal. One Health has to be brought into the education system. We have failed in our education of children as they grow up. So we are trying to bring that into our rural schools in Kolar district, where One Health is to basically let them know the interconnectedness between environment, animals, and humans in that order. If we can, the answer lies in the teenagers. So we are trying to aim at the teenagers who fall between 13 years and 18 years. Fortunately, it coincides with 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th standard. They are in the formative years of thinking. If we can impress upon them, apart from compassion, which they're born with, how to grow that compassion by having project-based learning, which involves animals and environment. This is something we are trying to do. I would like to encourage you to make a movie along that lines, and please let us know how we all of us can help you to make that movie. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I am.
I'll make a point on this shelter home and zoo point. So basically, zoo is not that you just pick up animal from the forest and put them in the zoo. So zoo is basically for those animals which were born in captivity. And captivity, for example, a lot of time what happens is, the first time mother, they abandon their cubs. So most of the time, the cubs that we get in the zoo are all hand bred. We feed them by hand, and once an animal is bred by a human or touched by a human, they cannot survive in the wild. So even if 3 or 4 days in the beginning, if a human goes and touches it, it will not be accepted back in the wild. So most of them are abandoned by their mothers in the wild. They have not been bred in the wild. They have been bred in captivity. Then zoo born animals and the problematic animals. which are, for example, man-eaters or animals which have been coming in constant conflict with human habitations, which are cattle predators, all that. Those animals only are kept in the zoo. And not that the zoo is some kind of heaven. So, we also have our own emotions I also, since I'm the government, I cannot take sides and I'm bound by certain rules. But we also have a lot of things to say about zoos, not that they are perfect homes. And when you talk about animal shelters, again, a part of the ruling of Supreme Court was that, ABC rules will be followed, but the dogs which are in the institutional areas will be actually taken away and put in shelter homes. So again, dogs are territorial animals. Basically, how are you going to run these shelter homes? It's a big question. And what you're going to do is you're going to actually indirectly cull them. You not directly cull them, but there will be competition. There always there's a very unhealthy competition in the shelter homes, whether you'll be able to maintain. And then there is also a very high chances of breakout of diseases. So there's a breakout of disease, and the entire zoo, the entire shelter homes falls, prey. No, we can do that. What I'm saying is, I am speaking as on today. Of course, everything can be done. Yeah, when we could vaccinate 1 billion people in 2 years for COVID, we can do anything. But it depends on the will to do that.
Those animals are put in zoo. Like zoo is used for conservation, scientific, all these things we do that. But those animals which come in conflict with humans, those are put in zoo, definitely, right? I come from Andhra, like Tirupati is very close to us. We see so many leopards attacking this thing, right? Whenever leopard attacks, it is taking into this thing, zoos or whatever they keep with themselves, right? So this is the case. I know it, right? So in this case, the same case is with dogs. Human animal conflict is happening.
Take the problematic animals. You can just round up all the dogs from one institution and put them in shelter.
How can we decide
So
it?
that's why any animal which has problematic, which has been continuously attacking human being. So you have to identify those problematic individuals.
Let me step in here. So let me just highlight the position just to explain in terms of what are the rules now, right? So there's something called as the Animal Birth Control Rules 2023, right? It has a very clear demarcations in terms of how this approaches. Two things. So the first thing the rules do is it categorizes animals into two categories. One is pet animals, the other one is street dogs, or what they call as community dogs, right? Or community pets. So there are two clear distinction in that particular rules. I'll come to that. 1 second. Let me explain this, right? I'm explaining that itself. Just 1 second. Just bear with us. Now, the pet dogs are ones, the rules as they prescribe are ones which are owned by a certain individual. Community, or essentially what they call as street dogs or community owned dogs, are those, I'll categorize them. They are either abandoned or homeless, or those which are living on the streets or within gated campuses or communities. So these are the categorizations, right? Now, this is how the rules provide for. Now, the rules also provide for this, that now the municipal corporations, if they are not in the position, then authorized agencies can, pick up dogs, put them through, the sterilization process. But if they see the fact that certain dogs are either infected with rabies or that they're very aggressive, then hold them back in the shelter. Those which are not, then you release them back to the place where they are, right? Now, this is what the rules provide for. I'm not telling we can have all qualms in terms of no, the rules are right, wrong. That's a different place, right? That place was in 2022 when they called your comments in telling, do you have any kind of concerns with these rules, you bring it up. Or else you also have the forum of approaching the court and telling, no, I have a different opinion on these, right? There's a place for public engagement, a legal engagement, as well as a political engagement if you want to go through those routes. But this is what the framework currently is. Is this, of course, as Deepika rightly pointed out, there's an issue of enforcement. And enforcement is in everything, right? As in a general aspect, we are a community who don't like rules, right? We like rules in terms of being made but not implemented. I always ask this a simple question. How many of you get on your two-wheelers without wearing a helmet and more than 70 or 80% of the room will raise their hand, right? How many of you know that there will not be any more cameras over here? You will go beyond speed, right? And there will be at least 30 to 40% in the room who will say yes, right? Now, the trouble is we know there are rules, but we don't want to follow them, right? So essentially what we are coming back to is enforcement mechanisms failure. And this is a systemic one across the country. This is not specific to this particular issue, right? Yes, do we need more focus? Maybe the Supreme Court order will get that in, right? In terms of it will be a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe the municipal authorities, the panchayats are now scrambling, telling, okay, there's a court order on us. We don't want a contempt order against this. Let us start looking at how we can reorganize ourselves, right? So that's where as Deepika pointed out, it's a step in the right direction, right? Now, coming back to ethical questions, as you said, right? I think the rules have clearly demarcated it, telling this is how we'll categorize, right? Those which are okay to be back in society, those which are not okay to be back in society. I'm not on pet dogs, I'm only on community dogs as the rules follow, right? Now, I will have qualms now telling that, oh, wait, but what about, who will verify this, right? Are they doing the right thing? That's there in every process, right? That's how the democratic systems are. Then if you feel that someone is not doing the right thing, you have a right to approach the court. This is the only manner. You cannot say, I'll put a system in place and it will work perfectly. It's impossible in any society. Then there will be lapses, and then you put in places in terms of measures of check, how do we overcome this? This is how society evolves. This is how laws also evolve. So when you draft a law, it is not that it will be perfect at the get-go, right? But I think when I look at these rules, it's a fair bit of decently, scientific approach. There's a clear demarcation, but of course, the enforcement will have its problems, and that's something that needs to be addressed, right? So this is how I want to respond to that. But I'll pause here now. I think we'll take on the other questions, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point, because I think several have said that, the Supreme Court's judgment may be a step, could be a, I think that's being overly optimistic, because in the first place, the judgment itself has come as completely against the legal framework which it was supposed to be. You can't just pass a judgment without listening to the other side, without having any set of rules. So it actually questions our own rights as individuals. Tomorrow, what will happen to us, right? So I am not very hopeful, and I know I should not be saying this about the court or anything, but I'm not really hopeful that the court judgment is a step in the right direction, and I don't think much will change. Already, the costs that many dogs are facing, the kind of cruelty that is happening at this point, should be unacceptable to us. Whatever it is, even a single dog, just like a single child's rabies case, bite case is unacceptable, we can't also have, yes, the culling of the dogs that is happening. So I think I'm not very hopeful about that bit about it. And the thing is that all these rules, the ABC rules, have existed from 2001. So why did the court have to now step in? If the court had to take a decision, it could have said, implement the rules better. They could have held the government responsible for not implementing the rules. But this is a completely different way of approaching this. And I think Vishal should say why he did the movie why he did this film in the first place. This is the conversation I was having with him before, to explain why he did it. And maybe he can explain the reason, which is more of a legal point, which affects all our fundamental rights. And it's beyond dogs, even the way the judgment was given.
I think when I opened up, I initially mentioned that you're giving control to someone who doesn't want to listen to you, and you're going against the constitutional structure. So I think, and just to answer, so I forgot to answer. I think we can discuss that later.
Thank you. I'd like to move away from the legal lens, and I have a question for Seema from an ecological perspective. So 2 days ago, there was a very interesting interview with Dr. Kritika Srinivasan in the Indian Express. She's a political ecologist who's actually doing work on human-dog interaction under the One Health program. And she's talking about how mass feeding is one of the things that has increased, possibly one of the reasons that has increased human-dog conflict, because it concentrates dogs. So I just wanted to hear your perspective on, there's the ABC program, which is, of course, very important for controlling population. But she says that in their surveys, they found that the main concerns people have are around congregation of dogs, barking, and concentration. So what are some of the other things from your experience that we can, use as a society to reduce conflict with dogs and other animals? And how can we be more effective in living, in more effectively coexisting with other species?
When it comes to dogs, it's a slightly complicated situation, because this is an animal that has been domesticated by us for a variety of reasons for over so many thousands of years, right? And we all have this emotional attachment. Those of us who do have this emotional attachment to dogs, I do too. But as an ecologist, even for me, it's very clear that if you're going to aggregate dogs in one place and you're going to feed, there are going to be chances of aggression, heightened aggression. And this is something that we have learned in our campus also. We have said no feeding of dogs. because we've realized that wherever the dogs congregate, there is some amount of aggression. And because we have students and children, it becomes even more concerning. But I wouldn't say stop feeding entirely, because it is thanks to feeders as of now, today, in the structure that we have, it is thanks to the feeders that you're able to identify, catch problematic dogs or catch dogs that need to be neutered. As usual, our choice is always extremes, but it is the Buddhist middle path that may sometimes always work for all of us, and even in this case. So we have to choose those battles very clearly. Feeding place for dogs is good, feeders are also good, but at the end of the day, this is a species. It is governed by population, availability of food. The litter size will be determined by how much food is available. So having garbage around is a huge problem, because if you have this uncontrolled garbage being thrown around, then I can see it in Sarjapura, where it's very evident. Your litter sizes of dogs are larger. There are more females littering more often. So there is an element of this ecology and the population ecology that comes into this. But because these animals are so closely associated with us and we have an emotional bond, we also have a responsibility to ensure that they are, they are not crocodiles, say, that we may just feed and not. It's a little more complex because of the domestication history.
Hi, I just had a couple of questions. First, as someone who studied the judiciary, reported on it very closely, and now works on animal law and policy, I had a very fundamental question to the solution that is being proposed, that is, let the judiciary take care of enforcement. I think that's a very dangerous sort of precedent to set, where we allow the judiciary to undertake enforcement of laws. Right, the judiciary's role was was supposed to be very limited, because it is not an accountable organ of the government. The government is still accountable to the people. The legislature is an elected body. The judiciary is not. And any attempts at judicial accountability have been failing for the decades now. So to accept that the judiciary can step in and decide the fate of millions of dogs in this country, and that it will do the right thing by upholding the rules, I think is slightly, as I agree, is being slightly optimistic, if not overly. The other point that I wanted to and I'd love to know if you think differently and why that faith in the judiciary still exists. But my second question is more fundamental. I think, as a movement, as the animal movement, we are always in this firefighting mode. And now it's almost like we can't question the rules themselves, because the rules are up for challenge and the rules are up to be disputed. But when you look at the rules have a lot of problems. The centralization, as you said, there are 77 project recognition certificates that the AWBI has given out. That's because the AWBI is not big enough to go to all parts of the country and give out project recognition certificates to hundreds of ABC centers. So either these centers function as illegal centers, or they don't function at all and they're stalled for years on end. So we have to somewhere look back and also question the problems with the rules. And institutionalized feeding is another issue with the rules and there's lots of science against it that says the contrary. So I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were about these two issues.
Okay. In terms of, should it be the court or should it be the executive, should it be the government? Simple, right? Now, the legislature passed the rules. The municipal authorities were supposed to do it. Did they do it? The answer is no. Right? Now, should the court, who should ideally have not done this, but so moto had to take this into account, telling that, the others are not pulling up their socks. Someone had to do it. They had to do it. Is it right, wrong? Did they do a wrong policy choice, which should have been actually left to the government? Yes, that's a debate that we can have, right? This is where I think the middle ground is, let's have experts on board, right? That will address that particular concern that will come up in that count. But when the other institutions are not doing enough, where else will you go, right? That's the trouble. And that's where, of course, that's why I said faith in the judiciary at least is better, because some of the other, I'll go back to larger environmental concerns. A lot of things would have been otherwise just, happened otherwise if the courts did not monitor them, right? So better than the executive at some sense, which have not done anything. I think a court monitored one will be much more, better implemented in that sense, because there is a fair bit of reporting on it. And there's also a check by the courts, right? So because of no other option, we are here. Otherwise, the right approach, of course, should have been the legislature, which makes the policy, and the executive kind of pulling up their socks and getting things done. Right? Yes.
This is a question and also a suggestion to Vishal. The next episode of your movie, I feel the camera should be on the bureaucrats. They are got away with murder. The bureaucrats. Okay, I work at the ground level and I know exactly what is happening behind closed doors. For example, even the Chief Secretary, Karnataka Chief Secretary, has given submission to the Supreme Court. All false. She says there are 96 ABC centers. I know how many ABC centers are there, how many are functioning, and how many have got AWBI recognition. Okay, AWBI is giving out recognition left, right, and center. Yes, that's true, and that's not correct. I don't know, suddenly they've waken up, okay, and taken action. But what is the Karnataka or any state animal welfare board doing? Could they have not done something? So these are my questions, and I feel the camera should definitely be on the bureaucrats. They're answerable. They have been extremely negligent, and now they are gone in hiding. They have done all the wrong things, and now the Supreme Court is coming so heavily on them. So they are just hiding, and finally it's the dogs that are suffering. Even with a simple thing as they promised they will give feeding spots for dogs, okay? Now they never went to RWAs and counseled them. The feeders were beaten up. Women were, stripped. What is happening? Where is BBMP now? The GBA. What is their accountability? I sit in the monitoring committee meeting right now with the GBA North. I'm asking all these tough questions, and they don't have an answer. And they're just hiding. And they have picked up dogs just because the Lokayukta put a case because of one killing that happened in where is that? In Jalhalli. An elderly lady was mauled to death. Those dogs, they just went and randomly picked the dogs, and they have, picked, and also another case called Sitapa's case. They picked 50, 60 dogs, and they've all been put in prison for 4 to 5 months. All the dogs are dying of tick fever and all that. And they have absolutely no evidence that those were the guilty dogs. So who's going to be accountable now? The dogs are just dying. So, thank you.
Of responsibility on your
So I want to ask all you people who are sitting on the panel, we are discussing a menace. First of all, you call them a menace. I'm a bit, feeling sad that you call them a menace. Sorry. You're on panels, you'll have worked in these agencies. I'm just an ordinary feeder. I feed dogs in Indranagar. My question to you is, are you going to tell us how can we coexist? If you are calling them legally community dogs, what is this community doing for these stray animals? That's my question. And I'll pose it to all 4 of you. I want 2 tips on how we can live together with these community dogs.
Okay, the way I see it is that each of us have some capacity to do something, and all of us, maybe most of us here, must be doing it because we all care about the animals, right? So I may not be able to feed 100 dogs, but I may be able to take care of some dogs on my campus. And so everyone should try and do this. But the most important thing is that the responsibility the compassion has to come with a lot of responsibility. If you are feeding a dog, then that dog has to be neutered, it has to be vaccinated and sterilized. I'm sure you're a feeder and you must be facing a lot of hate from people. But if you're doing that, then that's a great thing, right? So harassment, yes. But I think it's a very divided issue, okay? And I'm an ecology professor, and for us, the issue has always been between environment and development. Now it's about dog lovers, dog haters, and there's a whole spectrum of indifferent to dogs, etc. But to me, being in our university campus and taking care of dogs, one thing that I've seen is that, and my community where I stay, if we engage without anger maybe, and I know it's very difficult for people who have worked in animal welfare, even for me who's been here doing this for a long time, to say that, to engage with people without anger, because you see the cruelty, you see the lack of compassion. But if you explain to them, maybe they will listen. I've had people harass me too over dogs tomorrow I have to go to the campus and deal with an issue of dogs that has arisen, a spat that has happened between students. But I'm not going to blame the student who has caused the problem, nor am I going to take sides with the set of students who are the dog lovers on the campus. It is my job to be that neutral body and ensure that tempers are kept at check. One of the biggest problems I have learned about this any dog or animal related issue is a lack of awareness. It's now that I'm realizing that people don't even know that a notched dog means that it is being neutered. I mean, the level of lack of awareness is abysmal. And just like the Supreme Court in early 2000 made environmental science a compulsory subject in schools, I think hopefully the Supreme Court will also make animal compassion a compulsory subject in our curriculum in the 3rd standard and 5th standard. That is at least a hope that we have, because there's no other way to go forward. We have to talk to people getting enraged, angry, and I will be seething inside when I am talking to the most unreasonable person, but I realize that the only way to do it is to talk calmly.
So the other point of calling that film Menace. See, I'm not calling dogs menace. It was a satirical point where you see Menka Gandhi talking about it, that we are calling them a menace. Then so another speaker talking about dogs as menace. Supreme Court talking about them as a menace. So it was a take on that point. And then I have written that compassion, culling, and all. I was trying to strike a balance. And then when you see the film, you understand that that they are being called menace, and it is not something that I was being called.
And actually, we hoped that, if we name it Menace, there'll be more people who didn't like dogs who would come. But, that would have been a great way to show them how everything what is happening right now is wrong. But
Okay, so if this is the last question, first of all, I like to say that I'm quite happy to see that a lot of people are here. I'm filling the question. I believe that this is the highest form of capitalistic world we live in right now, and I'm happy that there is a dialogue on this, that we are thinking about people. Apart from people, dogs and in animals particularly. So my question is for Mr. Vishal. As ma'am asked him before, that what was your motivation behind creating this documentary? Because I believe that any form of art, its major duty is to create a dialogue or at least touch someone somewhere. So yeah, I think that it has done something. So what was your motivation behind this documentary?
I think I have mentioned that it was due to the Supreme Court suo moto order without hearing any side, and they just wrote. So to be honest, the order is not even an order. The amicus curiae gave some bunch of suggestions, and in the order, if you see the whole proceedings, you will see they just shuffled the number. So amicus curiae said, this is my first submission, second, third. They said, okay, make the third to the second, fourth to the fifth. This is what they have done. So the court didn't even write that judgment. So that was I started from the legal point of view, that how can you say, and I wanted to engage with this idea that when the court is saying something, and the media, see, we as a society are so biased towards courts because they have worked in the past, but right now they are not doing. So we need to switch our lens. And from the past few years, I also don't see court in the good lens. So I wanted to actually engage with the idea.